And now, America's #1 show on pop culture and politics. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth, a great and historic day with the selection of a new leader for the Roman Catholic Church, Pope Francis. The former Cardinal Bergoglio began his reign today as the 266th pontiff of the Catholic Church. And one of among many challenges that he will face is how to respond to ongoing violence, bloodshed, warfare against Christians. Recently, this week, in addition to the ongoing slaughter in places like Mali and Nigeria, there was a assault and more than 300 Christian homes, 4 Christian churches, totally destroyed, untold lives lost by rioting in Pakistan. And the rioting, of course, done in the name of radical Islam. Is there a need to defend Christians and others, to defend civilization, to defend humanity from the threat of radical Islam? Sure there is. Is there also a need to defend and ally with those Muslims who do represent millions and millions of people who want to resist some of the most unspeakable dangers of Islamism? Well, yeah, there is. And there is no better spokesman for the most wholesome and civilized and patriotic American visions of Islam than Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, who I'm meeting face-to-face for the first time. He's been a friend of this show before. He is the author of a tremendously compelling new book, which is his personal story, and it is also a call for unity on behalf of civilization. It's called A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim patriot's fight to save his faith. I should also say Dr. Jasser is not only a distinguished physician, he is also a former lieutenant commander in the United States Navy. Dr. Jasser, great to see you.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Michael. It's an honor to be here and meet you in person.
Well, thank you so much. And I should say he was here today speaking to Women of Washington, which is a great conservative women's organization, of which my wife, Diane, is I believe she counts as a proud founding member. But Dr. Jasser, in terms of all of the ongoing threats from al-Qaeda and from other radical groups, loosely aligned radical groups, there are some people out there who do want to suggest that the threat is greatly diminished or that it's been overstated or we can relax in our guard in all of this. Are they wrong?
Well, it depends who's making the discussion. If the discussions come from this administration, it is certainly much bigger than they claim, and they've been ignoring the duty of America, I believe, to stand for those who share our values. And the Obama administration has not only avoided the debate, but has been facilitating those who harbor ideas that would never be consistent with Western civilization. And it's amazing to me that this isn't a bipartisan issue. And this is why I love speaking to women's groups especially. When we went I just came back from Saudi Arabia and Egypt on behalf of the U.S. Commission on Religious Freedom. And my own observations there, I'll tell you, we met with a number of Muslim groups there that were women especially, that are trying to do their best to form groups that push back against theocracy, against autocracy. And if there's any population that I think the left and the right in this country can work with to help on a civil society level, it would be them. But yet we find this administration almost with a bigotry of low expectations, where they think, well, they're Muslims and Arabs, let them have their autocrats, let them have their theocrats, and we'll just, Secretary Kerry now in his first visit to Cairo, the independent Egyptian newspapers were full of pictures from liberals painting him as an honorary Ikhwani or Brotherhood member because they see us as, again, propping up their new dictators, not the Mubarak regime, but now the Brotherhood. So we don't have a strategy. We need a strategy in the Middle East. It needs to be a liberty doctrine where we advance people that believe in true liberty. But the Obama administration has not had a doctrine at all and has been basically allowing a Darwinian politics evolve where the strongest horse wins in every country.
1-800-955-1776 is our phone number. One of the things that is stunning to me is I do try. I get up very early in the morning and I read the world press and I try to monitor everything, but my gosh, there's so much going on, and nearly all of it seems to be bad from the so-called Arab Spring. Today we had a concession from Clapper, who is the head of national intelligence, that the Arab Spring has been a disappointment. He says it has given rise to Islamism. Now, there were some people, like one Zuhdi Jasser, who were fairly prescient on that. Why is it that you understood this threat far better than the President of the United States?
Well, Clapper not only is, he's the guy who said that the Muslim Brotherhood was a secular organization to Congress, so he's not only clueless, but dangerously clueless. And I wish I could, I don't think I was prescient. I've been living this my whole life. And that's what I talk about in my book, is that when I went to the university, I had grown up in a small town in Wisconsin in which, to me, my religion was all about morality, family values, and scripture. And then I went to the University of Wisconsin to face the Muslim Student Association, all these brotherhood legacy groups that had been fueled from petrodollars, and realized that there was a global movement that was pushing back against the West, that was trying to spread ideas that were an anathema to Western society and independence and freedom. And as a result, I knew what the threat was. And after the pressure cooker is removed in the Middle East of all these dictatorships and the cover comes off of that, it's not a spring, it's an awakening. And they have no networks built to all of a sudden have some political solutions. And they won't have democracy. They'll just have mobocracy, where a majority sort of elects what they think is an alternative to Mubarak, and it ends up being a new dictator, because they haven't had the ideas of Jeffersonian freedoms and liberalism really come into their society, and we're sort of abandoning that. All the while, people like Al Gore sell off to Al Jazeera, which is going to continue to spread more anti-Semitism into the West.
1-800-955-1776 is our phone number. You would be an excellent person to ask about this, but John Kerry just appeared, and he did it was a press conference in Turkey, and he was joined by a leader of the Syrian opposition. And the Syrian opposition leader, whose name escapes me for the moment, spoke and apparently puzzled Secretary Kerry, and everyone's trying to figure out what he meant. But he said, how can we be concerned about al-Qaeda? We don't care about the length of beards of people when in our city they are kneading dough with the blood of children. Was this a reference to the blood libel? Is it? And his city was Aleppo, which is your wife's hometown, your wife's family's hometown.
I'm not going to try to rationalize, what he said, other than to tell you that Syria is becoming more and more radicalized the less the opposition is able to get rid of Assad. Assad's regime is doing everything they can, shoot-to-kill orders, whoever moves or assembles together.
80,000 people dead so far?
80,000 dead, 3 million homes destroyed. This is what dictatorship... Saddam Hussein would have done the same thing in an Arab awakening. But, we thankfully removed that from Iraq. But, these types of comments come out, in some ways, I've said 3 months into the Syrian revolution that we needed to help the opposition because they have no weapons, no ability to organize, and they're fighting a Soviet-style military that had helicopters, jets, tanks, everything that would be able to put down this so-called, it's not really a civil war because it's so one-sided. And now they pick up weapons they haven't been trained in. So they're seeing the death of a country before their eyes. So what happens is that becomes a very fertile soil for al-Qaeda and jihadists to come in and sort of hijack it. There was no al-Qaeda there a year and a half ago. Assad brought them in. Iran is really why Assad still exists. So it's more al-Qaeda, it's more Hezbollah. There have been a number of Hezbollah killed in Syria. So this is the issue, is that he dysfunctionally tried to say that, we just want to survive, and but this is the issue. It's just like the lady the State Department tried to give an award to a few days ago because she was a victim of sexual abuse in Cairo. They wanted to award her as a standing up for freedom, when in fact she was deeply anti-Semitic and anti-Western. And when the tweets got exposed by the Weekly Standard, they then all of a sudden dismissed her and said, we're not going to give her this award. We can't take people into sort of one item and say we're going to recognize that and not realize that there's a whole pathology behind the society there that needs a wholesale treatment. But you can't do that under military dictatorships.
Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, his book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, it's posted at our website at michaelmedved.com. When we come back, Dr. Jasser knows the Middle East. The president is going there next week. What advice would he give to the president of the United States? Plus, we will take your calls, particularly any of you who strongly disagree with Dr. Jasser. He can handle it. We'll be right back.
1-800-955-1776. The Michael Medved Show.
On the Michael Medved Show, you can save 15% or even more on car insurance with Geico. Just go to geico.com or call 1-800-947-AUTO. The only hard part is figuring out which way is even easier. And it's easy to see why Dr. Zuhdi Jasser has inspired many, many people. He's enraged some people. He is the author of the very important book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam. We've talked about it on this show before. And American Muslim patriots fight to save his faith. It's up at our website at michaelmedved.com. And Dr. Jasser, the thing that I respond to so well, I should also say that he's the founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, which is a very different kind of Islamic American organization. Very briefly, before we get to the substance of the president's trip and we get to our callers at 1-800-955-1776, Dr. Jasser, if you were to define, say, the difference between your organization, the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, and, say, CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, what would the essential difference be?
The essential difference is those organizations are here on a evangelical mission to transmit their form of Islamism to the West and neutralize our impact upon Muslim-majority countries. Our organization is here to absorb liberal principles into our interpretation of Islam. So we're Americans that happen to be Muslim, not Muslims that demand to be American.
Excellent. What should the president do, and what should he avoid when he goes to Israel next week?
Well, if I had my crystal ball and my wishes, I would say that he would unveil a liberty doctrine and finally put a name to a doctrine which he's not had in the Middle East, and say that we are no longer going to use the old paradigm of simply shortcutting whoever the strong horse is and helping them, but realize that we will help civil society organizations that share our values and begin to hold their leadership and power structures accountable for the values they say, the condemnations they make or don't make. And when he was in Turkey and about Syria, he should have immediately mentioned to the president of Turkey his, I think, very anti-Semitic comment about Israel. And supposedly the president of Turkey says that Israel is a crime against humanity. I mean, that was left unaddressed by the president. And that's the type of stuff. The Middle East, I can tell you, having come from that culture, if they know that you fear them, will step all over you, take your money, and not respect you. If they know that if they then fear us for our values, the way President Reagan stood against the evil empire and called a spade, if we start doing that in the Middle East, yes, it may cause diplomatic unrest, but at the end of the day, it'll let the people on the ground start to know that we represent their interests.
Here's a fascinating thing, Dr. Jasser, and it's just something I wrote about, so I'm pretty well schooled on it, is what President Erdogan, not President, Prime Minister Erdogan of Turkey had said was he was giving a speech where he wanted the UN to classify Islamophobia as a crime against humanity. And it said Islamophobia should be a crime against humanity, just like anti-Semitism, fascism, and Zionism. And that's what John Kerry was responding to. And John Kerry did respond. he took it up with the foreign minister. But when he met with Prime Minister Erdogan, Erdogan, first of all, dismissed him, didn't want to make a long meeting. And then apparently Kerry tried to raise that comment. He said, I'm not going to talk about that with you. And Erdogan went on.
Well, the issue is, Michael, as you know, these guys will find always they have responses, just like President Morsi tried to explain what he meant when he said Jews were apes and pigs. And when we met with the Brotherhood in Egypt, they found some contextual way to explain it. And this argument about Islamophobia, I mean, how I'm fearful of Islamism. And does that make me a Muslim bigot? That's absurd. I'm a devout Orthodox Muslim myself. But yet what's happening is they are suppressing free speech by creating this concept of if somebody disagrees with tenets of a faith or of a political movement, that they somehow become bigoted, and it's creating blasphemy laws. And the UN has become part of that, and a good amount of resources from our State Department developed the 1618 resolution that he was addressing. And even that, they say that it ended up with American standards. That it only has to be speech that incites violence. But at the end of the day, what they're saying is that if all of a sudden they have mobs killing people, then they prove that incites violence, regardless of whether it wasn't violence that was incited, and that somehow the movie, because it offends Muslims or whatever it is, ends up being Islamophobic and needs to be punished. And then he ends up saying that that's about crimes against humanity and connects that to Zionism. I mean, that's absurd. The attacks against Israel as a state for the Jewish people, I think, is veiled. It's the new anti-Semitism. The State Department has reported about it as being the new anti-Semitism, and they can't dance around that.
Let's go to Steve in Detroit. You're on the Michael Medved Show with Dr. Jasser.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
Very well, sir.
Thank you for taking the call. Love your shows, and appreciate the wisdom of you guys. I'd like to ask your guest, or you, is Obama's secret plan to cut Netanyahu's legs out from under him from being continuing as prime minister and getting these factions that he can't get together now to divide up Jerusalem to the other groups that claim it's theirs? That's some of the word we're getting out of some publications. I don't know how reliable it is, but is that what our president could be doing, trying to cut the legs out of Netanyahu to split Jerusalem?
Dr. Jasser, any comment?
I've not heard that plan. I don't think President Obama has too many plans when it comes to Israel, other than when it seems like he has to go, he ends up going. And I don't think he's been as strong an advocate as he could be for the only real democracy in the Middle East at this point. So, I don't know what his plans are. We've still been trying to figure out what his doctrine is when it comes to Israel and the Middle East and the threats around it, and especially with the threat coming from Iran, it's not clear.
And by the way, when it comes to dividing Jerusalem, there are very, very few things in which you could assemble a 3/4 majority in the Knesset. On that issue, you can, because the two parties that he's trying to bring together both are in complete agreement. The new Yesh Atid party, the Yair Lapid party, the one with 19 seats in Knesset that Netanyahu needs, one of their absolutely unbridgeable and solid commitments is no division of Jerusalem. So if President Obama actually goes there talking about dividing Jerusalem, that'll help Bibi a lot. There's just no question about it.
Power.
When we come back, I want to speak more personally to Dr. Jasser about you participate actively in your mosque. You obviously have a network and a community. Do you find that there are a lot of your fellow worshipers who feel as you do? When we come back, how moderate, patriotic, pro-American, pro-liberty Muslims can find one another and can find like-minded people of other faiths. We'll be right back with Dr. Zuhdi Jasser.
1-800-955-1776. The Michael Medved Show. That's 1-800-955-1776.
34 minutes after the hour on the Michael Medved Show. One of the things about the president's upcoming trip to Israel, he's going to spend all of his time meeting with dignitaries and basically in government buildings and in embassies and in some hotel meeting rooms. He also may spend a little bit of time going to some historic sites of profound meaning. Apparently there are plans for him to visit the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, Yad Vashem. What President Obama won't do is to see the real Israel. And when I say see the real Israel, that means to meet with Israelis, to get to know people. I wish that President Obama or everybody who could go to Israel could sit down with Israeli families and have, for instance, a Shabbat meal, a Sabbath meal on a Friday night. That's basic. Or go to a concert or to a play or watch a soccer game or go to a park. You will see the real Israel when you come to Israel with us. And I hope you will. We're leaving June 24th with an optional Greece extension. It's affordable. It's unforgettable. It's hands-on. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, a leading American Muslim, has been to Israel. He went with the Conference of Presidents of Major Jewish Organizations. He's not Jewish. He's Muslim and a devout Muslim. And by the way, if you happen to be Muslim, we are also meeting with some very, very constructive, dynamic Palestinian Muslim contributors to Israeli society and to West Bank society who are building rather than bombing, which is a beautiful thing. So please join us. Come with us to Israel. Find out all about it. 800-213-8260. Don't rely on the media to give you your impression of what's going on over there because you'll get complete distortions. 800-213-8260. Or find out about our itinerary at michaelmedved.com. Dr. Jasser, right before the break, I was asking you about your point of view, which is, as you know, strikes so many American Christians and Jews as just so wonderfully refreshing and so tremendously needed that there's no contradiction between being a devout Muslim and being a very patriotic American and being a pro-Israel patriotic American, as you are, frankly. Do you have a network of friends, family, associates who share your general outlook?
As far as America and its freedoms and our main mission, which is the separation of mosque and state, absolutely. We are certainly a minority when it comes to within active Islamic organizations or mosques, because those institutions have for so long been controlled by Islamists and Salafists who carry and have been really, fueled for decades by Middle East petro interests especially. But if you look at the general Muslim community, non-mosque goers, just into the community, business folks, the majority, I believe, agree with us, but they see how I get targeted. They see the attacks I got from al-Qaeda sites, let alone American Muslim groups that came after me when I got appointed to the U.S. Commission on Religious Freedom. So they say behind the scenes they support, but in front they're like, we came here to get away from that. And, but they're growing. They're starting to realize that the Middle East is in a tipping point, and if there's any community in the world that can start to produce the knowledge and the institutions to tip it towards the right direction, it's the American Muslim community, and they're tired of letting those organizations speak for them.
Let's go to Matt in Fort Worth, Texas. Matt, you're on the Michael Medved Show with Dr. Zuhdi Jasser.
Hey, Michael, love you and love the show. I've been a Medhead since long before it was cool, so I appreciate what you do.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Sure. Hey, Dr. Jasser, I've been following you for years, and I'm pretty sure, amazingly enough, I just heard you say that the more secular-minded Muslims agree with you, and the more religious-minded ones don't. And I think that's where your main problem is. That's where your solution is going to run into serious difficulty, is that practicing so-called pious Muslims, of which you say you are one, are not going to have a lot of following with you because they see you, in my opinion, as a modern-day Martin Luther. And interesting, on a day where a new pope is chosen, and in a time when I think that Western Protestantism is having a serious identity crisis and maybe even collapsing as a schism, I think Islam and those who practice the faith and actually believe it's true see you as a threat to its core and see you as a tool of a secular
Okay, stay on the line, Matt, because Zuhdi Jasser needs to answer that. This goes to the very core of his mission. His book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, it's posted on our website at michaelmedved.com. Right back with Zuhdi Jasser.
1-800-955-1776. The Michael Medved Show.
Maybe you're like me. I don't know about our guest, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, and you're just kind of a klutz when it comes to home repair, do-it-yourself kind of stuff. Well, even if you're like that, klutzy and incompetent and can't do much, you need to try InstaFit cordless honeycomb shades from Blinds.com. Now, you can install them in just seconds. No tools, no drilling, no brackets. They're beautiful, affordable, and removable. Seriously, they are. You just open the box, and seconds later, they're up. It sounds like so much fun, even though I don't know where we need any new blinds. We've already gotten beautiful blinds from Blinds.com. Maybe we should get these too. Your family and friends won't believe you did it yourself. Go to Blinds.com and search for InstaFit for details at Blinds.com. Speaking with Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, he is the author of the very moving, personal, and important book, Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim's patriot's fight to save his faith. He is a physician, a doctor in internal medicine, and he is also the founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. We have Matt in Fort Worth, Texas. Matt, I hope you're still there.
Oh, yes.
And I think to rephrase the question so everybody understands where we're coming from here, Matt, I think, was asking an important question, which is if you're right about the real message of Islam, and that real message being enforcing and supportive of American ideals, not contrary to them, not in contradiction to them, how is it that so many of the people who seem to be more religious, who have given everything to the religion, have it wrong, and you have it right?
Well, it's not that they have it wrong. The issue is there's not just one Islam. I mean, some of these guys, like the Prime Minister of Turkey, wants us to believe there's one Islam, but there really isn't. There's many interpretations. And the tribalism, the pathology of this sort of, and especially in a country where we're a minority, they try to unify everybody into one pigeonhole, and it doesn't allow diversity and a disagreement within the community. And that's where we have to work together as Muslims and non-Muslims to light a fire under the Muslim community to say that you have an obligation as Americans, because of the political security threat that Islamism globally is having, to push back against Islamism, because we can't do this without you. And Muslims are the shortest, I think, route to doing that. And I think the majority don't want to live under Islamism, but they're being forced because the media ignores it, government ignores the issues, and meanwhile, the secular Muslims, yes, it's a challenge, but there's nothing unifying us. We're all diverse politically, religiously, etc., so there's nothing unifying us against the very unified brotherhood and all of its offshoots.
Let's go to Chris in Philadelphia. Chris, you're on the Michael Medved Show. Hello, Chris. No, this button isn't functioning there, guys. Chris, are you...
The nationalists that escaped the Bolshevik Revolution, you're already in the dustbin of history.
You're talking about moderate Muslims?
Yes.
Well, I hope you wouldn't sentence us to death so quickly. The rumors of our demise. I mean, if you look, the Brotherhood only got 25% of the vote the first time around in Egypt, and the only reason is you remove a pressure cooker and it explodes. The only organized system that was functioning under the dictators, other than their generals and their military arms, were the Islamists. So it's going to take a little bit for the non-Islamists to unify under and understand what liberty and come through reform. I mean, the West itself didn't sort of turn the lights on immediately after the Enlightenment. It took a while and a large revolution that killed tens to hundreds of thousands.
Appreciate your call, Chris. Sam in Sacramento, you're on the Michael Medved Show with Zuhdi Jasser.
I'm in full sympathy with Dr. Jasser's point of view. However, I feel that he and people like him, they are really not addressing the root cause of the violence, which are built in the scriptures, biography, and the acts of the prophet. And unless Muslims accept this fact, just like Christians did during Enlightenment and all those things, Islam will not reform, and I think all these attempts by people like Jasser, they will fall short.
Dr. Jasser.
I think that's a great question. That's why one of the last chapters in my book is about how can moderate Muslims reinterpret those passages and look at the passages that are pretty violent. And one is to contextualize them into history and say that they don't apply anymore. And every faith has had, unless it's pacifist, has just war doctrine. So I apply my doctrine the way the American government and my military as I serve does, and nothing takes preeminence over that. And that's the way the only way to do that and defeat that concept of the jihad is to defeat the Islamic State loyalty, which is part of Islamism, and we have to do that.
I have a challenge to you on that when we come back, and it's a challenge about the essential difference between Muhammad and Moses. We'll get to that in a moment.
From politics to pop culture and from coast to coast, this is the Michael Medved Show. Now, it's time for Medved on Movies.
Acclaimed director Ang Lee cooks up a visual feast in a lavish 3D adaptation of a beloved novel called Life of Pi, new on DVD.
I was born and raised in one of the most beautiful places on earth. It was a time filled with wonder that I'll always remember. But when my family chose to move our zoo halfway around the world, that is when my greatest journey began.
And it takes an uncomfortably long time before that journey actually begins, with a gut-wrenching shipwreck that leaves a teenage boy stranded on a lifeboat with a huge and very hungry tiger.
In times like these, I remember that he has as little experience of the real world as I do. We were both raised in a zoo by the same master. Now we've been orphaned, left to face our ultimate master together. My fear of him keeps me alert. Tending to his needs gives my life purpose.
But there are real questions about the purpose of this odd, ambitious, impressive, and ultimately frustrating movie. With utterly magical, shockingly realistic computer-generated beasts, scenes of real magic and enchantment, but a slow pace, annoying framing scenes for its flashback storytelling, and an inconclusive, mostly incomprehensible message about the existence of God. Rated PG but profoundly scary themes of death and danger ought to make it PG-13. 2.5 stars for the unsatisfying Life of Pi.
The Michael Medved Show. MichaelMedved.com.
Don't forget to enrich your knowledge of American history. Go to MedvedHistoryStore.com. You'll be stunned at all of the different CDs and MP3 downloads you can engage in at a bargain price right now, and to enrich your knowledge of this great country. And you can also do that completely for free by going to michaelmedved.com. That's medvedhistorystore.com or michaelmedved.com, and click on the Hillsdale College banner to enroll in the free class on America's heritage from Hillsdale College, right up through the Reagan Revolution, an inspiring opportunity. Dr. Jasser, we're speaking with Zuhdi Jasser. His book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, is posted on our website. Right before the break, I was talking about a challenge to you and to what you were saying about the desire to create a modern, moderate patriotic, pro-American, pro-liberty Islam. One of the things that people like me who take the Bible very seriously face all the time is people say, well, it's horrible things in the Bible. Some of them highlighted in this new History Channel series, and there's lots of slaughter and there's killing, and we can say, well, that's because the Bible is both a historical record, it's the story of a people, many of whom are flawed, and yes, and then there are elements where we are called to be better and higher. And yes, the Quran focuses in the same way, but in Islamic tradition, the idea of pointing out flaws or mistakes that the Prophet makes has not actually been encouraged, to say the least, has it?
No, not by the Muslims themselves, but I do think the Quran does have passages I could show you where God corrects the Prophet as being a human being that made mistakes.
Really?
Yeah, there are passages in which the Prophet had said something to his people, and then God corrects him and says, you should not do that, you should do this. So Muslims believe he's a human being that's an exemplar of behavior, just as Moses, Abraham, other prophets are. So we hold him in the same esteem as Jesus and all the messengers of God in the eyes of our faith. The issue for us as Muslims is to be critical of things that, I mean, if you look at Muslims, we usually accept scientific advancement, but when it comes to political or philosophical, they don't. And I think that's the issue. The Prophet mixed being a head of state, head of the military, and a messenger of God. And I believe that when we teach our youth, when I talk to my kids, I tell them that I believe if the Prophet was alive today, he wouldn't want the same person to wear all three hats. He'd want to separate those. And that when you combine them, it creates a internal demagoguery of government on its people. And that reform needs to happen. And we need to question that not all behaviors. And the difference between a Salafi and a modernist, the Salafi always looks back to imitate the Prophet in 620 A.D. The modernist looks forward to use the tools of moral guidance to develop new, better societies like America did.
And may you be successful in that effort. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, his book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, refreshing, challenging, moving, and important. It's posted at our website at michaelmedved.com. Thank you, Dr. Jasser, for your contributions to this greatest nation on God's green earth.